Okay, so the introduction is about Pandas, a freely available library for loading, manipulating, visualizing sequential and tabular data, such as time series, microarrays, tables, and so on. So what you can do with this is that you can load and also save standard or more or less standard tabular formats like comma separated values, CSV, tab separated values, Excel files, database formats, etc., etc. We still have the problem with the important part is about flexible indexing and aggregation of series and tables, and statistical operation, numerical operation over a collection of data, which is called broadcasting. And there is also visualization, which are not covering today, apart a very simple example. We will talk about that on Tuesday. So these are some links that are here just for documentation. What you would like to do is to have a look at this one. The official documentation is already included in most of the installation of Python, Anaconda, and the like. But we don't have a book on this. There is no part about this in the books, and so you need to look at the official documentation. And we will use this as an example, which is interesting. It's probably not interesting neither for the biologist, neither for the data scientist, but is a very famous data set about flowers, and in particular iris. And there are a lot of different species with different characteristics, like sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and then you can compute aggregate data over that. Okay, you can find it here, but you can find it everywhere, more or less. And the idea is that this is a very short demonstration. It's just to give you an example of the power of these systems. But this is like a little bit like cheating, because it's you never have a specific need like the one that I'm going to show you. You want to be much more specific, so you have to work a little more to obtain the data that you want. So what we want to do, this is very common, this is something that you will do a lot in the next weeks in the labs, is to load the data set by parsing the rows in a file. You want to filter the data set by considering only part of it, for example, the rows that are related to Iris virginica, and then compute the statistics over the values of the rows, making sure that you have convert from strings to float, everything as required, and then draw some plots using a library which is matplotlib. And the nice part is that you can do something really, really simple like this. So you import pandas, and then you want an alias to make it shorter. You import plotting, and you import a specific method of plotting, and you import the library for plotting, so for drawing plots and so on. And the nice part is that you read the file, and that's it. You compute a scatter matrix only on the lines related to Iris virginica, and then you show the results, and that's it. This is very simple, but it's simple because it has been constructed in a way to give the maximum results with the minimum effort. This is not standard. Probably you have more effort with a very nice results, but you need to put a little more effort. So what you get is this. And the idea is that a scatter matrix, yes, I see that someone is interested. The idea is that you are computing, showing the correlation between everything and everything else. Clearly, there is no reason to compute to show correlation between sepal length and sepal length because they are clearly the same. So in this particular case, they show you the distribution. Okay, but for all the rest, and you see the data here, the x-axis here, the y-axis there. For all the rest, and see that is repeated, so every block here has a particular y-axis. And the general idea is you see that, for example, sepal length and petal length is very well correlated. In other cases, you don't see any particular correlation, and it's showing everything in a single magical plot. Okay, but probably you don't want no, you want something like this, but probably what you want is not covered, is not obtainable in such a simple way with the 4 lines. Okay, but you understand a lot of relation. Clearly, this is the inverse of this because it's petal length with sepal length. So there is a symmetry between the two parts of the matrix here. But the point is, wow, that's good. Okay, but we need to understand how to work on that. So the idea is that pandas has 2 data types. You may recognize this taken from other systems like MATLAB or R, etc. The concepts are similar, but for those of you who do not know anything about this kind of systems, the idea is that you have series which are one-dimensional data, okay, like time series, calendars, the output of one variable functions, and so on, okay? And then you have data frames, which normally represents two-dimensional data, okay, like column-separated values or comma-separated values, macroarrays, database table, a matrix, and so on, okay? And each column of a data frame is a series. Note that this you can also interpret in some way each row as a series, but normally it doesn't make sense because you need to interpret data frames as tables. So you have columns names and then a set of rows, each related to a particular entity. But because a series is a column of a data frame, we'll see series first, and then we will analyze how the concepts of series applies also to data frames. So let's start. The series is a one-dimensional array, which you can also see as a list. Actually, you can transform a list in a series, but you have a labeled axis, and they can hold arbitrary objects. Okay, the axis is called the index, and can be used to access the elements. Normally, it can be very, very simple, like a numerical index. So you have the first element, the second element, the third element, and so on. But you can be really flexible, and so the index could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on, or the months, or whatever could be a reasonable index for a particular piece of data. Okay, it's given that it combines a sequential set of data and a labeled set, an indexed set of data. It combines the good parts of a list, the list data set of built-in in Python, and the dict, which is the dictionary data set, dictionary data structure, which is included in Python. So this is normally not the way you create series, but you can do that in the sense that you can create a series starting from, for example, a list a list which is obtained in a completely different way. Here you see it already written, but you can create a list, for example, of the Fibonacci numbers and put it in a series. Okay, so the idea is that here you see a simple list. At that point, if you just specify the list, what you get is a series which there are 3 elements, 3 values, and 3 indexes that are as simple as list indexes. So 0, 1, and 2, because you have 3 elements from 0 to n minus 1. Okay, and if you print the element, you get this, but you also get this information about the content of the type of the content which is included in the series. But there are other ways. For example, you could also specify the index, okay? And the index has not to be something reasonable or I don't know, between 10 and 200. It could be something which looks here quite random, but could be, I don't know, the day of the year. So for some days of the year, the 2nd, the 5th, and the 8th, you have information which is associated. So when you print the series, you get that to value, so to index 2 is associated the value A, to index 5 the value B, and so on. Okay, and this is another way to create them. Then you can create them also as dictionaries. If you remember, this is the way to specify a dictionary on the program, and but you can also create dictionaries on the fly by associating values to keys to values. At that point, you see here that A is associated to capital A, B is associated to capital B, and so on. And when you print, now the index is composed by the keys. And so this is another way to see series, and is much more similar to a dictionary. And you can also create a series by specifying that you have a value which is constant, but that point is not really a series, it's just an element, but you can specify an index, which in this case is a range between 0 and 4. So in this way you have something which every element is equal, but then the index is a variable, okay? And this could be useful because later we'll see, for example, how to sum indexes, some series together, multiply series together. There are several operations that you can do, and this means that you can specify series which have a very specific content. This is an example of a series in which you have the days of the week from Monday to Friday, and then sleep hours, the number of hours that you have slept during those days, okay? Or on average, I don't know, just 2 hours on Tuesday, a little, very little, but anyway. So you see, you create sleep hours as a series, so the sleep hours are the values, and you specify the index by say index is equal to days in by creating a series. Now you can do something very nice. So normally you may access your data set, your series, by specifying, for example, the labels. So now the labels are Monday, Tuesday, and so on. So you can access the number of hours that you have slept on Monday, just specifying mon in the element. You can, series are mutable data sets, so you can modify the number of hours on Tuesday. Okay, very simple. And they still behave like a sequence, like a list. So you can also get the value which is in position 1, which could be useful in some cases to distinguish between the labels and the position. Okay, so here, if you don't specify a label, you are actually getting position. Okay, so here the number 3 is because we have changed 2 to 3, and so we are getting Tuesday anyway. So it's the second day because we are starting from 0. Something that you may want to know is the fact that when you specify a label which does not exist, it gives you an error. I just simplified, just put the error, but this breaks the execution of your program, so that's it. But if you print get s.get sat, it gives you none in the case the index is not present. So given that Saturday is not present, then gives you none. So at that point you can say something like, if s.get Saturday is none, or is equal to none, then you do something, okay? The nice part is that you can do also slicing, but this is where is the power of series. You can do slicing also using the labels, the indexes, okay? So the idea is that if you want a sub-series just from Tuesday to Thursday, okay, then you have just to specify it. So you say from 2 to THU, okay? The column here is the same as slicing. So the idea is that you get only the part which is required, okay? And if you specify instead, you use the indexes, then you get the usual behavior of slices. This is from the third but last element to the last element, and these are, this is from Wednesday to Friday, okay? You can also get, and this is useful in some situations, particularly where the series are becoming larger and larger over time, you want to have information about the beginning or the last, probably the last part. You can ask for n elements to be extracted from the beginning or the end with head or tail. And so the head with 2 elements is Monday and Tuesday. The tail with the 3 elements is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay, so you can extract a sub-part of the dataset. Okay, you can also, and this is something that you cannot do with the list and with dictionaries. You can also specify a given set of indexes and labels. Okay, so the idea is that, for example, here I'm interested in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, okay, and can specify that. But note that we are using the square brackets twice. The first is because, or the external one, is because we want to identify, to say that we are taking something from S, which is the series. The second is because you give it a list of labels, so you have to specify a list of labels, so I'm using a double open bracket, okay? So this is for the list, and the external one is for the extraction, so to say. And again, what you get is another series with just the data that you need, okay? Then there is something which is called operator broadcasting, and the idea is very simple. The series class, so the module that defines the series, can apply an operator to all the elements of the series. So if you have this series here, Monday to Friday, and then you want to print S+1, what this piece of code does? One is not a series, it's just an element. But the only way that the system can interpret this one is like a series of ones. So the idea is that you are summing 1 to each element. And you see, Monday is now 7, Tuesday is now 3, and so on. Okay. Note that now the D type is not object, but is int 64, which means 64 bits integers, because all the elements are just numbers. Okay. And you can also do something like this. Note that I'm pretty sure that you can double, for example, the value of a series by just specifying s times 2. Okay, and this is very useful and very simple, and this is some sort of vector operator over a vector of element. Yes. So the concept of operator broadcasting is taken from NumPy, which we are going to see next lecture, and it's a generalized version of scalar products from linear algebra. Okay, the rules on how to apply broadcasting could be quite complex, so you can read the documentation and you see that there are a lot of possibilities. These are just the basic ones. Okay, and for the moment we will consider only constant broadcasting. So the value is equal, what you apply is equal to for all the elements. But you can also have, let's say, dynamic broadcasting, which means that the value that you sum is computed in some way, but it's much more complicated. Now, the other part which is really interesting is masking and filtering. Okay, so the idea is that you can apply Boolean conditions to your series, and this is a Boolean condition which is broadcasted over all the elements and computed for all the elements. So the idea here is that if you have this series, which is the usual one, and you want to just print the series which is larger or equal than 6, so what it does is that it goes through all the days from Monday to Friday, computes if the value is larger or equal than 6. So what happens is that true, false, true, false, true, because we are sleeping a lot, not enough, a lot, not enough, a lot, not enough. Okay. What you obtain here, note the D type is still a series. Okay. So it's a series which instead of being associated with a integer is associated with a Boolean, so a value true false. So what you do is that then you can use that series to specify the extraction that you want to, the filtering that you want to do on the original series. So how will you read this part, the third element here? Please compute give me for which elements the value is larger or equal than 6, then apply these true values to the original series and give me only those values. And you see, Monday 6, Wednesday 8, and Friday 9. Okay, and that's it. Okay. Questions so far?
What does it mean, broadcast?
And you can do something like summing together series. Now, given that I don't have two series, what I do is to sum the same series twice, okay? But by slicing it, so getting different series. So the idea is the following. Let's say that I have a series where I have data from Tuesday to Friday. And let's say that I have another series where I have data from Monday to Thursday, okay? And I obtain this by just slicing the original series in two different ways. Then I can sum together series. And this means that for every element which is in common, like Thursday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I get a sum, okay? And so given that there was 5, then summing it twice gives you 10, and then 4, and then 16, okay? For all the other values, you get not a number. That value that you see there is a special value like none, which is different from none. It means I don't know. There is no number associated to it. Okay, and none is just a symbolic constant that specifies that the object is a number-like entity with an invalid or undefined value. Okay, it's also what you get when you try to divide by 0. What you get is not a number, none. Okay. So what you can do here, you can just, oh, this is just an S, small s, not a capital S. You can keep them, and so you need to do something with those, but you can also apply an operation which is dropping the not numbers, which means that you just remove them, and so you get only the sum for the values which are in common, or you fill the not number with 0. So note that I've created other variables to contain that. At that point, every not number is equal to 0. Why this is not the normal behavior of not a number? Because we don't know what is the semantics of this sum. If the sum is please sum together the hour of sleep, then 0 could be a reasonable response. Okay? No, it's not really a reasonable response in this case. In some cases could be a reasonable response, okay? And in other cases, you want to know just what happens in the common days. You can also, this was an example that I had in mind, you can also use this additional parameter when you are adding, which is an operation which can be used to sum together two series. So this is different from the operator plus, because the operator plus, there is no way to specify strange behavior. But this is the add function, so you can specify some behavior, and the behavior that we use is that whenever we are looking for an element which is not present, it's like there is a 0 here. So if you are asking ourselves how many hours have you slept in the last 2 weeks, and you can say, okay, in those days which are not present, I consider them as equal to 0. And so now we have all of them as before. Okay. So you can also do a lot of statistics over the data set, over the series. So if this is the usual series, then you can compute the sum of all the elements, the product, not so useful, but could be important, of all the elements, the maximum, the arg maximum, which gives you the label where the maximum is, or I guess, I don't remember exactly, the first label where the maximum is, the mean, the variance, the standard deviation, the median, and the cumulative sum, which is the sum of all the elements from the beginning to the end. So from Monday to Monday is 6. From Monday to Tuesday is 6 plus 2, 8. This is an 8. From Monday to Wednesday is 8 plus 8, so the previous value plus the new values, 16, and so on, and you get exactly this series. So this is a cumulative sum over the, let's say, time series, but in general series. You can also get quantile information. So for example, you could ask what is the value in the median, and this is the 0.5 quantile, and this is 6.0, because you see is 2, 5, 6, and then 8 and 9, okay? So that's okay. But you can also get several of them, like the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter. So this means 25%, 50%, 75%, and you get the various values which are in that position. Okay, clearly with 5 values is not so significant, but you can be interested in that. And note that you can combine this in a very complex way, because you see here we have S 3 times. So first I would like to compute the value in the median position, okay? And this is 6. Then I would like to extract all the values which are larger or equal than the median, so the second half, and this actually is not an extraction, it is a masking, gives you true and false, and then you apply a third time, and you take this true and false, and you get the elements in which you have you have values which are larger than the median. So you can do very nice, apply very nice operators in this case. But you need to understand exactly what is going on here. So this operator, S.quantile 0.5, gives you a scalar number, a single number, which is the value, so you can use it for your masking, so S larger or equal than 6, and then for your filtering, only the values which are larger and equal than 6. And then I could go on forever, probably, not forever, but for a very long time, and reading actually the documentation and see how many nice operator you can apply. So for example, this probably should be covered by the statistical course, but you can compute the Pearson correlation, the Spearman correlation, but in this case you have to specify which method you want to use. And then, for example, autocorrelation with a time lag. What does it mean? It means that you consider a series and then another series which is moved by, so for example, this is a 62859 with a lag of 1 is 6, 2, 8, 5, and 9. And with a lag of 2 is 6, 2, 8, 5, 9. So then you can compute correlation, and you get clearly 1.0 when you're having lag equal to 0, because you are comparing a series with the same series. So the correlation is clearly 100%. Then if you try to correlate the series with a lag 1, then you get something which is not really correlated. But given how it is organized, if you try to correlate it with the series with the leg 2, you get a very high value. Okay. There is also, but this is just for probably you may want to do this if you are using Python in an interactive way, not in a program. If you want a summary of a lot of statistical information, you can just print the scribe and you get all counting, mean, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, quartile, and so on. Okay. And this is a first introduction to plotting, but it's really, really simple. I'm not looking at all the possible aspects here. We are doing this in the next lectures. So the idea, if this is our mechanism, and you say that you have a series which is given by the sleep hours and the days, okay, then you can plot the series, and you also need to do this operation, but you will see it later, to also obtain graphically the result. The plot, you see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., is on the x-axis, and the values are on the y-axis. Then you can have the see plot here is not specifying anything, so you get the default plot. But if you want to specify different formats, for example, a bar plot, you have just to specify it, and you get a bar plot of the same data. Okay, very, very simple. But we are not going, this is just to show you a very simple example. We are not going into the details now. Okay, the next part is related to data frames. And the data frame is just the bidimensional analog of a series. Is essentially a table, and could be heterogeneous objects, but there could also be all the same objects. Okay, so now you have three pieces of information. You have the index that gives you what is the label at the beginning of each row. Okay, could be an identifier, could be some sort of key, whatever identifies every row. Could be just a sequential number. Okay, then you have the columns, which are series by themselves, which means that every column has a name and a series of data, and the index is shared by all the columns. And then the shape, which gives you the dimension of the table, which is a combination of the number of columns and the number of rows. Okay, a lot of information that you can do in a series, you can do also an entire data frame. Okay, for example, broadcasting. But there are some aspects to be considered. So, for example, here I have a dictionary of series. So this is one way to initialize a data frame. So you see, I have a name, and then column, and then a series. You normally don't do this. You read a file and that's it. But if you want to do it manually, this is the way to go. And the idea is that I have a series with names. These probably are collection of people, Ronald Reagan, but also Bobby Fischer, etc., and Ronald McDonald. And the idea is that this is a series where you have Bobby, Ronald, Ronald, Ronald. Okay, and then there is another series which is as a key surname, and a series of data which is Fischer, Fischer, Reagan, McDonald. Okay, so now, given that I've not specified an index, what you get is the following. If I create a data frame like this, and then I print the data frame like this, what I get is several rows, one for each element that I see here, with several columns, one for each of the labels that are given to the columns, and these are the labels, the names of the columns or the element that you see there. Okay. So if I try to print the data frame index, what I get is name, surname, that gives you the list of indexes of the names of the columns. Okay, and if I try to print the shape of the data frame, gives me information about the fact that I have 4 rows and 2 lines. Okay. Okay. Sorry. The columns were this element here, and the index is this element here. Okay. So the columns are the name of the columns. I was wrong, and the index is the what you have as an index. Given that it is a range, you start from 0, you end in 4, and the step is 1. Okay, and stop 4 is like every range. It means that you arrive to 3. You can also do. You can create different indexes for each of your columns, but this is something that you must be careful because you see I have a series here which contains 0, 0, and I have an index for this 0, 0 which is A and B. Okay, and then this is column X, and then I have a column Y, okay, where I have 0, 0 again, but this is linked to B and C, which is different from this one, from A and B. So now what I get is that I still get a table, I still get 2 columns because they are specified here, X and Y, okay, but some of the elements in the rows are not present because there is no element for A in Y because the index is not specifying this, and there is no element for C in X because X is not specifying an element for that. Okay, and this means that you have not a number values inside, and again this is because we see that all the values are numbers, but we don't have a number for that, so it's not a number. Is it okay? Trying to, and the rest of information is what you get to describe the dataset. Clearly, when you see something like this, this is information about the columns of a data frame. This is something which is iterable, so you can say for each column in the f.columns or stuff like that. Okay, so you can go through all the columns, and this could be useful in some cases, but this is more likely to be seen in the lab rather than here. Okay. What else? I don't remember this. This is just another example. Sorry, I don't remember why it's different from the previous one. Not really. Okay. Yes, this is so these are two examples in which when you create the data frame, you can also specify a common index for everybody, for every column. So the idea is that when you create this, without specifying the index in the data frame, the index is 0, 1, 2, 3. But if you specify it differently, then you can add an index to all the columns that you have. Okay. So for example, here column 1 is this values, column 2 is this values, okay, and then you can add an index here to all the elements in the same order. So sometimes could be equal. And you can also create data frame from a list of dictionaries, which is the opposite way as before, because before was a dictionary of list. Okay, here you are specifying them as a list of dictionaries. So you see that A is associated with 1, B is associated with 2, A is associated with 2, C is associated with 3. These are two different dictionaries, but they have labels, keys that can be used as column indexes, column names. So the idea is that now I have a data for the first element, which is 0, that has values for A and B, like you see here, and then another element where you have 2 and 3, but associated with 2 and C, sorry, with A and C. Okay, so you can combine also this. I see some perplexed faces, but this is just another way of showing kind of stuff. Oh, the nice part here is that you don't really need to create your data frame but by yourself. They are normally already included, can be read from a file. Okay, so if you have this iris.csv file, which you can download from the link below, the link in previous slide, and you read it using pandas as an entire data frame, then you are happy because you get all the data and you get also the labels that are included with the data frame. Okay, so the idea is that you get sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width as labels of the column, and then you have several elements because you don't have an index for those between 0 and 150, because I'm printing the shape and there are 150 rows and 5 columns. The 5 columns are these values that you see here, and then the name of a particular instance of an iris flower. So this is Iris setosa, and these are the values. Okay, so when you get this, you have your data set, and you can forget all the part that I've just introduced about how to create them manually, because clearly you read them from files. The terrifying information is this one. Then your file could be written in several ways, and there is a parameter in the read CSV function for most of the strange behavior that your file could have, but you have to find it here, which is taken from the help function, which is clearly not really readable, but the purpose here is not to make it readable, to let you know that there are, in a single slide, there are a lot of possibilities. For example, you can say the number of rows that you want to read, because maybe you don't want to read all of them. You can specify, this is really useful, the separator. The values that you see here are default values, which means that normally the separator is a comma, because it's a comma separated file. But if you want to use a tab, then you specify a separator /t. Okay, you can say what is the delimiter, which is normally could be is included. I don't know exactly what is this, the meaning of all of them, but the point is that maybe you could add other information for the delimiter. You can handle in some ways duplicated columns, and so on and so on. Okay, so you see, you can decide what is the value of the decimal, okay, and decide what is going on there, etc., etc. Just to give you an example, this is from the bio set of examples. This is a data set which has this problem. It starts with a line which is not something that we really want to read, because it's a comment in some way about the content of the file. Okay, and is a tab separated file, so not a comma separated file, and there are information associated with that. So what do we do is that if you read the CS, the file, which is called like this, and we are wise enough to say that the separator is the table, is the tab, okay, then we get information about the shape, which includes a lot of lines, okay, and the number of columns, which is just one, okay, and then if you print the first 3 lines, you get something like this, okay, which is not exactly what you want to get. So what we use, this was probably an error, this should be 2, is that we can, sorry, this was, but here I'm saying that I'm skipping the first row, okay, and so now the number of rows is 1 smaller, and then I get a real data set with the name of the labels and the various elements on each column. So this is the second column, this is the first column, okay? And then I could say that, for example, I could consider a comment every line which contains, which starts with this symbol, okay? And this is a way to removing not only the first line, but also every line that contains a comment, and you can do something like this. And so on and so on. So I don't want to go into the details of all that set of parameters, but there are a lot of them, okay? Now, when I have a data frame and not just a series, then I have to be careful on how I treat the data frame in order to extract values, okay? So the idea is the following. Whenever I use just the square brackets, just once, what I get is a column. So I should use a column name here, and I get a series which is the values in the column, okay? I could extract a collection of columns. At that point, I still have a data frame, but a smaller one. And a collection of columns is expressed as a list of column names. Then I could use, select a single row or a set of rows, okay? But in order to do that, I need to specify, to use this data frame dot lock, okay? And I can use a label if I have labels for my data frame, or a set of integer location, iLocation, if I want to extract a given element, a given number, a given row number in the data frame. In both cases, I get series. Then I can slice rows, and I can do something like this, okay? And I can select rows by Boolean vector, which means that I'm doing masking and filtering. Okay, I'm showing an example of this now. So, in the following, what I will use is a random collection of elements from the Iris dataset. So, I read the dataset here. Okay. Now, see what I'm doing here. I need something that I will introduce in the next lecture, which is NumPy. But what I'm doing here, I use NumPy for random number generators. Okay, and with a number random generator, which is this NP, okay, sorry, this is an NP random. Okay, I can compute a permutation. A permutation of what? I can do a permutation of the first numbers between 0 and what is here. What is here is the shape of the dataset. Remember, the shape of the dataset is the number of rows, is a tuple, like 150, the number of rows of the dataset, and 5, the number of columns of this dataset. So if I'm taking, it's a tuple, so if I say tuple square bracket 0, I'm taking the first element, 150. So this is all this value is 150, is one. A permutation 150 is a random permutation, 150 is a random permutation of all the numbers between 0 and 149. Then I take the first 5, because 5 here is the default. So I take just 5 of them. So in this way, I've selected 5 random lines, rows of the entire dataset. Okay, so when I print a small shape, I shouldn't get 155. I should get 55, and when I print it, I get only a subset of that. In fact, I get 55, which is the new size, and these are just random rows in the entire dataset. Okay, but I have all the columns because this is what I asked, just slicing over some values. You see, so now I've done a lot of operation in a single line. I selected 5 elements at random and I've extracted only those lines. I still have the index because I need that in order to see what is the position. Okay, now I have small, and why I need small? Because I can reason on it on the slides, okay, not the slices. So this is much simpler than the entire dataset that I cannot really print. And so the idea now is that I can, now that I have small, I can do print, please, all the values in the column name. And what I get is the index, because this is always associated. I get a series, and the values which are associated with the column name. And so Iris virginica, versicollis, setora, virginica, setosa. Okay. There is something that I not introduced so far, is the fact that you can also use the name of the column as a specifier for your data frame. So this small dot name is exactly equivalent to this. Okay, you get exactly the same result. And so this make it, apart from the name small, which is not really significant, this is significant because you can work on your data frame saying, I want to compute everything about sepal width, and you can do it by writing dot sepal width, which is good. Then remember that if you are able to extract one column, you can extract several columns by specifying a list of them. So The idea is that you get a list of columns and you get an entire new data frame, which is even smaller than the original one, even smaller than the small one, because you have just selected a couple of columns. Okay. Remember, the small one is just to get a print which is stays inside the cell. Now you can extract a row, okay, and here you have a problem that the index of your data sets, so the labels of the rows, are numbers, but you want to extract. You can treat them as numbers, so identify them, or as as indexes, so you can make a little bit of confusion. This is why we have lock and ilock. Okay, so if I get the lock 114, this was the first line in the small data set, and if I print this row, what I get is actually a series which has been rotated 90 degrees, because you get sepal length, which is the name of the first column, sepal width, second column, third column, fourth column, and fifth column, name. And then you get all the values. So actually what you got is a reading as a series of the first row, or the row which label is 114. The same you can get from ilock 0, because this 0 means the first row. Okay, then you can also extract several rows using multiple labels or multiple positions, okay, index locations, and so you can get something like this. I want the first, second, and third, which are identified by 114, 62, and 33, and or 0, 1, 2 as index location, and you can get an extraction of the original dataset. Broadcasting, as I was saying before, and as we were saying before, is applied automatically to all rows or to the entire table. Okay, so for example, if I do something like this, what I'm doing here, what is small sepal length, is the column containing all the values of the sepal length. Okay. Same here, small of sepal width is the column containing all the values of the sepal width. Okay. By summing them together, what I'm doing, I'm summing two series, and this is not operation that is related to data frames, it's operation related to series. So what I get is the same index, 104, and the sum of their associated values, which I don't know if has any reasonable meaning in biology, but I don't care, because this is just an example, and the idea is that they just summed the sepal width and the length, and that's it. Okay? And what I get is again a series, because I'm summing together two series. If instead I'm crazy enough to summing together these two data sets, which are the same, data frames which are the same, I get a data frame in which I've summed together 114, which is the index, I sum together the sepal length, I sum together the sepal width, and so on. I also did something not really reasonable, which is summing together the names, but summing two strings is getting you two strings, because you see here Iris virginica plus Iris virginica is repeated twice. There probably should be, I don't remember if I have it, a way to avoid that, but you can do as you want. Okay, so this is a So, for example, here, the idea is that you want to work on the series which is given by the row 114. Okay, so the idea is that if you do something like this, you get just the row 114 with the values which are associated with that. But you also get the names like Iris setosa, which is something that you cannot really compute the mean over that. So, given that this is a series, I can do slicing on that, and slicing like this means everything but the last element. Okay? So now I have everything apart from this, and now I can compute the mean. And so why I can compute the mean? Because what I obtain is a series, so I can apply the mean operator or the mean function. So I can compute the mean of this and obtain this value that you see here. Okay? But this is on the rows, and it's quite complicated because normally you work on the columns. If you want to do it on the columns, it's much simpler because you can take the data frame, take just the column name, and this is the quick version of that, and gives you a series, and then you can apply mean. Okay? Or you can compute, and this probably has a mathematical and statistical significance. You are computing the mean over a column. Or you can compute the mean over everything, okay, which can be, I don't know, can be less meaningful. The idea is that at this point computes the mean over all the columns. Gives that for you in a single. But the result is now a series because you have an element for each of the column. So this is the average for sepal length, this is the average for sepal width, and so on and so on. Okay? Altogether, this is okay. Now I need to see if I'm able to explain it. Okay, so this is a small that you see here. So we need to parse the brackets. So you see here, we are parsing the brackets like this up to here. Okay. So this is an extraction of columns. And in order to do that, if you want several columns, you put a list of names of columns. So this is a list. So now what I get is a data frame which contains only the name first, the petal length second, and the sepal length third. Okay, but I don't want the entire data frame, but just a part of it. So a data set in which small dot petal length is larger than small dot petal length dot mean. So only the elements which are larger than the mean. And this is quite complicated in a single line, but you can do a lot of analysis in this way. Okay, so this is the result. These are all values which are larger than the mean. So the part difficult to understand, I guess, is this one from here to here. Okay, why? Because this is you need to understand that this is creating small dot petal length is creating a series. The greater than operator is creating a mask. So this mask has to be applied to a real value, a float value, which is computed as the mean. Once you get a mask and you have this operator here applied to the series, what you get is a filter on the series. So you get a subset of that. So you see, it's quite complicated, but the point is understanding the role of this, all these values. And then the idea here is that then you have another data frame that you see here, and this has another column which is name, and you see that it contains other information. Okay, so now you want to combine this, and the idea is that you want to join the rows that have the same identifier. Okay, how you can do that? By the way, this is sequences and names printed, so you can see they are pretty simple data frames. Okay, quite small, but this is good for an example. Okay, now you want to join them or merge them, so you merge sequences and names. You have this parameter which represent the label of the column in which you do the join, which is ID, and the method that you use to do the join, I will explain it later, here is inner. Okay, so what you get here with inner is a table which has ID, which contains 3 IDs, sequences, which is taken from here, and names, which is taken from here, and only the table lines which are, so the IDs which are common to both tables are present, and the mismatched IDs are dropped. So Q99697 has now met NCR and Pete whatever, human, etc., etc. Okay? And you see that we have merged 2 different sources of information in a single one. Clearly this, apart from the biological example for data scientists, this is a very important operation that you do continuously. You get data from different sources, you have something which is in common, and you do what is a merge in a database. And if you use the left operator, the IDs are taken from the left table, which means sequences here. So you see here that now I have sequences that are the same here. I'm taking the value from here, and here I'm saying not a number, not a value, to means that I'm not being able to find a match for this Q9 there. Okay, Q9W there. I have write, same as before, but now we are taking the IDs from names, so these IDs are actually these IDs. Okay, and now it's P59, which is not present in in sequences, so I put not a number here. And finally, outer, which takes all the IDs from the first and the second table and puts not a number whenever it is needed. So all IDs are named. Okay. Then there is a group by method, which can be used to perform operation of group of rows. If you have ever used this kind of operators, either in databases or in Excel or in LibreOffice or whatever, you do the operation like this. So, for example, this is info about the Iris dataset, okay, and then you could do grouped Iris group by iris.name, okay, and so for each group in grouped you can print group 0 and group 1 dot shape. So what is going on here? You have you are grouping information by name of the species. So Iris setosa, versicolor, or virginica. Versicolor, sorry, or virginica. Okay. So by doing this group by, you are collecting together all the information about Setosa, Versicolor, and Virginica. Okay, so now what you have here is a list of data frames. One for Setosa, one for Versicolor, one for Virginica. What is the shape of each of these data frames? Given that the dataset contains 150 rows and 50 of them for Setosa, 50 of them for Versicolor, 50 of them for Virginica, this is what you get in your data frame. Okay, so you have grouped every element of the names in a different data frame. Okay, and then you can perform operation like this, which is really powerful, but you need to perform a lot of exercise. But then, if you have your groups, and then you perform this aggregate operation, then you can compute the mean over all of them. And so you compute the mean of sepal length, the mean of sepal width, the mean of petal width, the mean petal length, petal width, over each of the groups which are here. And the groups are identified by their names. Okay, so what you get is in an operation like this, then you have the mean on all the potential values of interest in all the files, okay, in all the rows. Okay.